to Shining, Shimmering, Splendid, where I review Walt Disney World rides and attractions. For those of you who saw my Disney Holiday Show special, you'll remember that I mentioned that was part one of a two-part holiday review. And I fully intended on it being that way. This review was supposed to include the drone show at Disney Springs, the holidays around the world at Epcot, and the Once Upon a Time show at Magic Kingdom. However, every time I went to Disney Springs, the drone show seemed to not be running, and I never made it to Epcot to see the holidays around the world. And the Once Upon a Time show wound up not being a holiday show so much as a new show that they brought out in time for the holidays. So instead of a part two of a holiday review, what I decided to do instead was to compare the new Once Upon a Time show at Magic Kingdom to the old Celebrate the Magic show that used to run before the Wishes fireworks. So basically what I'm going to do is take you through both shows, talk about the similarities and the differences, and then decide which show I prefer the best. Both of these are light projection shows that project onto Cinderella Castle, with Celebrate the Magic being a kind of a pre-show to Wishes, and Once Upon a Time being more of its own show that plays about 45 minutes after Wishes is over. Celebrate the Magic opened on November 13th, 2012 and closed on November 3rd, 2016. And then Once Upon a Time opened on November 4th, 2016. So it's still brand new. Let's start with Celebrate the Magic. Like its name suggests, this show really is a celebration of everything that makes Disney great. It's a montage of Disney films and songs and moments. It starts with a drawing of Walt Disney and it ends with his quote about how it all started with a mouse. It's very cyclical and it's pretty plotless. There's no real story attached. It's just a giant nostalgic celebration. Some of the featured films in this montage include Alice in Wonderland, Dumbo, Wreck-It Ralph, Lion King, Tarzan, Lady and the Tramp, Tangled, Toy Story, Pirates of the Caribbean, and Frozen. This show is special because it really transforms the castle into different things. Like during the Wreck-It Ralph sequence, the castle becomes a brick castle that Ralph is trying to wreck and Felix is trying to fix. It moves and shifts during the Alice in Wonderland sequence, and during the Toy Story part with To Infinity and Beyond, the giant spire turns into a rocket that blasts off into space. But I would have to say that my favorite part of Celebrate the Magic is the Tangled section, with one lone lantern making its way up across the castle and then the entire thing just filling with lanterns. It's beautiful, it's magical, and I cry every single time, and I even cried watching it on YouTube during research for this. I'd say the one thing that Celebrate the Magic doesn't have is some of your classics. It doesn't have a lot of films from the Disney Renaissance. It doesn't have those classics like Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella. It's a lot more of the modern ones. So while that's nice for the young kids who are kind of growing up with those films, maybe for the adults they would prefer some of the older ones. Once Upon a Time, on the other hand, has a very clear storyline. It's Mrs. Potts and Chip, and she's telling him bedtime stories of some of his favorite tales, and those tales include Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, Peter Pan for a little bit, Frozen, Alice in Wonderland for a little bit, and Winnie the Pooh. So rather than try to put together a whole bunch of Disney films, Once Upon a Time chooses specific films and focuses on it a lot longer than Celebrate the Magic does. Once Upon a Time actually kind of reminded me of those old Disney sing-along VHSs, you know, the ones with the owl and the school and all that. It felt like Mrs. Potts and Chip were like a framing device for listening to all these songs. And I was actually surprised that there wasn't like a little bouncing Mickey head giving you all the words to the songs projected onto the castle. One of the coolest things about this show is that Cinderella and her prince are actually projected onto the balcony of Cinderella Castle, so it looks like they're actually there. If you don't like the fact that Celebrate the Magic has a lot of modern Disney films, Once Upon a Time does give you more classics. Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, Peter Pan, a lot of the older ones. Still no Aladdin, still no Sleeping Beauty, still no Little Mermaid. They're featured, but they don't get like a huge feature. They just kind of show up on the castle sometimes. One of my biggest problems with Once Upon a Time is that the projections aren't actually that great. Chip and Mrs. Potts are kind of poorly animated. Their mouths don't move to what they're saying. It kind of feels like a looped track that just keeps repeating. You can see Anna's body kind of loop and repeat during her section. It feels like it needed just a little more time to get smoothed out. This show also tends to focus its projections onto the bottom half of the castle. So if you're really short like me, it can be hard to see part of it. If you're farther back along Main Street, it's going to be hard to see, I'm going to say about 50% of the show, whereas Celebrate the Magic tends to project onto the entire castle. I think the animation in Celebrate the Magic beats Once Upon a Time hands down. It feels like they took more time with it. Once Upon a Time almost feels like it was rushed to be put out. Celebrate the Magic transforms the castle, whereas Once Upon a Time just uses the castle as a backdrop. It doesn't transform it. It's almost more like the Star Wars show at Hollywood Studios, where the Chinese theater is just their projector screen. And that's what the castle is in Once Upon a Time. It's just a projector screen. I will say I like the framing device of Once Upon a Time. I just wish that Chip and Mrs. Potts were animated better. They're just not, they don't feel real. And while both shows have a sort of a Frozen sing-along section, Once Upon a Time's drags on. You get almost the whole song of both For the First Time in Forever and Let It Go. And it's just too much Frozen. I think at this point you can tell that I prefer Celebrate the Magic to Once Upon a Time. Despite the fact that it doesn't have a story, I think it's just more cohesive. It's more thought out. It's better planned. It makes better use of the environment of the castle. It includes more stories, and it's just more magical. I know that that's like the silliest word to use, but it is the most accurate. Celebrate the Magic is more magical than Once Upon a Time. But don't take my word for it. Celebrate the Magic is still available on YouTube. Look it up, check them both out, and let me know in the comment section below which one you prefer and why. They're two completely different shows, so it stands to reason that people are going to like them for very different reasons. If you like my reviews, feel free to like and subscribe. And if you like this new format of comparing old attractions with the new ones that replaced it, let me know in the comment section below and suggest some rides or attractions that I should compare. This is actually kind of fun for me. I like this format. And as always, check back every Thursday for another shining, shimmering, splendid review.